Hey guys, Chip here, and Jerry and I have a new product for those of you who'd like to automate your KitOps K-Packs. This new product is called KitOps Batch, and there are some very exciting new functionalities which I'd like to take a minute to explain. Hey, a big shout out to Ahmed for his help in writing the code, and of course, Proxy for his help as the lead developer for KitOps. So first off, KitOps Batch works with the latest versions of KitOps 2 Pro. And if you don't have Pro, then Batch just will not work. So make sure you install KitOps 2 Pro first. So there are 4 basic things Batch does for you automatically. Number 1, it will automatically create thumbnails for a whole folder of KitOps inserts. Doesn't matter if you have 10 or 100, Batch will generate all the thumbnails based upon how you set it up. And number 2, it'll automatically convert a folder of OBJs into KitOps inserts. It scales them and places them at the correct location and orientation, and you can even save presets for your most used import settings. This, of course, allows you to quickly use third-party kitbashing models and quickly make your own KitOps K-Pack libraries for your own use. And number 3, it can export an existing Blender scene file into either separate OBJs for each object or separate OBJs for each collection. And finally, number 4, Batch will now process a folder full of transparent pings to create labels which can easily be applied to both flat and curved surfaces. So with Batch, you can repurpose your existing Blender scene files and create your own KitOps K-Packs. And you can sell them to others, and all in a matter of minutes. And if you decide to sell your K-Packs, let us know and we'll advertise them for free on the KitOps web store, as well as give you a shout out via our active Twitter account. My guess is everyone who has KitOps 2 Pro has a bunch of their own inserts, and by using KitOps Batch, they can quickly get them into shape and make a little money at Gumroad or Blender Market. So let's dive a bit more into details of how KitOps Batch works. Okay, so let's take a look and see how we create a bunch of thumbnails. So I'm going to go into this K-Pack I've got called Ortho right here. And as you can see, there are no thumbnails created yet for it. So over to KitOps Batch, we're in the thumbnails area. What we want to first do is open up our render.blend file. Now, this is an interesting file, and notice that it is already set to render with Eevee, and I'm going to set it to render with cycles. And if I want, I can just hit save at this point, and it'll remember that every time. Now that our render.blend file is open up, let's load a sample insert. And I'm going to go into my ortho. Here we go. And I'm going to just grab something like this keyboard. And I'm going to load that insert. And you see it comes in pretty small, actually. So I can say align camera to insert, and we'll see what it looks like. I'm going to actually go ahead and look at the rendered view for a second. I can hit this Q and make sure that lock camera to view is set. And with my keyboard selected, I can just turn it around and just move it in and out and get exactly the kind of view I'm going to want from my thumbnail. And then once I've got that done, all I need to do is say test thumb render. And as you can see, there's our render. Now, if I want, I can also give a little bit of a padding to it. I can move it out just a little bit and say test thumb render, and we'll see that we actually have the padding. So I can render with cycles, or I can render with Eevee. At this point, I'll go ahead and show you what the Eevee looks like too. I'll just leave it like this, and then I'm going to go under my window, and I'm going to say toggle system console. It's a good way to monitor the progress. Now that I've opened this insert, it's going to know that all the files from that folder we want to generate thumbnails for. Now that we've tested the thumb render, now I just hit the batch render thumbs. This is being hitted, so I'm going to hit tab, and now the console comes back and we're all done. So wow, that was fast. So I'm going to go back over to KitOps. Let's move this down close. I'm going to refresh and go into ortho, and you'll see now all of those files have been rendered. That happened extremely fast, as you can see. Now if I use cycles, it'll go a little bit slower, but that's the thumbnail feature for KitOps Batch, and how cool is that? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you can convert existing kitbashing collections into KitOps K-Packs. This particular kitbashing collection is called the Black Phoenix Full 3D Kitbash Library, and it's by Vitaly Bulgarov. And I purchased it, and it's got just tons of stuff. He delivers it as, I believe, OBJ and FBX. Let's take a look at what happens when I import that directly into Blender. So here we are. This is it all imported directly into Blender. Basically, now I have all these objects. So it's very simple from a KitOps Batch standpoint to export these all. It's very easy to export all of these. I just go in the OBJ tab here, and I say convert blend to OBJ, and I use this objects. And here are all my blends, and I'm going to say batch convert to objects. So I'm going to again go in my window, toggle system console, got it up here. When I use convert.blend to OBJ, it's going to save all of these files in the same folder where the scene file is. And what I can do is I can convert either the collections or the objects. In this case, I'm going to convert the objects, and all I'll do is say batch convert to OBJ. And I'll do that now. And once I do it, I'll alt tab into the system console. And there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and pause this and come back to you when we're all done. Okay, we're all done. That was done in a couple minutes. Let's go ahead and show you what we have over here. These are the different OBJs that were converted. Okay, so we're going to import an OBJ. And the reason why we're doing that is because instead of using kitops batch to import that whole folder and finding out that we don't have the right scale and everything else and the orientation, we're going to import one and set it in the settings when we import it, and then we can copy those over to kitops batch. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go back here and we'll see that this is the 040 object. And if I come under here and say import OBJ, we choose the 040 object. And what I'm going to do under clamp size, I'm going to set this to 1. I want it to clamp the size of the actual object. And I'm going to leave the rest of these in the default. And I'll say import object. And once it's done, we'll have the object over here, and I can say period, and there's our object. And we can see that that's all it took, was keeping everything at the defaults. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm going to start with a new file, and I'm going to say import OBJ again, because I just want to see those settings. And notice -Z forward Y up is what we want there. So I'll come in here and I'll go into kitops batch, and I am going to go to the OBJ settings, and I'm going to choose a folder to import. Here they are. I'm going to accept that. Make sure that I'm creating a kitops insert. I'm centering XY and setting on the ground. I'm clearing the custom split normals. And now I want to give it an override. But before that, let's figure out what our import settings are going to be. And before we said it was going to be -Z forward and Y up, if you recall. And then also we're going to want to make sure that we clamp the size to 1 as we did previously. And what really the clamp means, if it's set at 0, it means that it's not going to adjust the size whatsoever at all. But if it's set at 1, it's going to adjust it by a factor of 1. It's not actually going to fill out a 1 unit cube or anything like that. I'm not exactly sure. You know, you want to play with that number to get it to where you feel well. And then of course, like we said, we're going to keep these other pretty much constant. And once we've done that, let's go ahead and create a new preset. I'm going to call this one Decal import. Now I've got that set. I can always use that any other time I want to do that. Now that's done. It's just a simple matter of going under Windows, toggle system console, and hitting the batch convert to blend. Because remember, we already know what folder it's going. It's going to save all those blends in that same folder. So before we batch convert, what I want to do is I also want to create a material override. So let's look at our materials that we have in the scene. I'm going to delete this one right here, and I'm going to create a new material. And let's just go into it, and we're just going to call this metal, make it metallic, and make the roughness almost to 0, just something like this. And the reason for that is that I want to create an override material for every object that we are going to create a insert for, because they're coming in with kind of a grayish color, and I don't want to use that. So I'll come over here. Now this metal material is inside this scene file. I can just choose it, and now that's the override. And then once that's done, it's very simple to go ahead and toggle the system console so we can see it, and batch convert to blend. And it's one thing I'll mention before you do this, don't save it to a Google Drive or a Dropbox. It's moving files so fast that sometimes they can actually get locked in a funny way. So I'd always save it to an SSD and things will go really fast. So let's watch it. And we're done, and that took under 2 minutes, so that was actually really good. Next thing we're going to do now that we have all our inserts created is let's go into the folder where these files were created. And here's our folder, and you can see we have the 215 files, and I'm going to grab all these blends out of here. I'm just going to cut them, and I'll go into I'm going to use my downloads folder, new folder. I'm going to call this Vitali Master, and then I'll go in here and say new folder, call it Vitali Kit, and in here I'll paste the blends, and there they are. And I'll go back over here and I'll say edit preferences, go to my KitOps. In my file path I'm going to add a new one, and I'll choose my downloads folder, date modified, and we'll say Vitali Master and Vitali Kit, and then go up one. So we're in this area, and we say accept. And with that done, let's go back into KitOps here and refresh it, and we'll see down here Vitali Kit, and you'll see there's actually, we have absolutely no icons whatsoever yet for any of this. So that's the next thing we're gonna do, is we're gonna make some icons, but we're gonna do it a different way. I'm gonna show you how you can create a scene file. It's really cool. So let's get started. We'll go to KitOps batch, and we'll go back into thumbnails, and we'll say open render.blend. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say file, save as, and I'm going to call this one, in downloads, I'm just going to call this one a render vitali.blend. Okay, so now we've saved it as something else. And then I'm going to, of course, load an insert, and that's going to be the Vitali Kit. So I'll just grab any of these, and there it is. Align camera to insert. There it is. Here's the rendered view for that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, now that I have this set up, I'm going to actually change this background, the floor. So I'll go into material here, and I can change the lighting. I can change actually the world HDRI, and I might mess with that as well. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to change the names of any of these, but I can change the color. So if I go in here and say the base color, I'm going to make it more of a blue. I can do that, and I'll get something kind of interesting. I can go into this, load up another HDRI if I want. And once I get it to where I want it, I need to save the scene file. But before I save it, I need to delete my insert. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to right click and say delete hierarchy for the inserts. If I save this, I'm still going to be in trouble. And the reason why is that even though I deleted this, Blender hasn't forgotten about it. So I'm going to go into this thing called the Blender file, and I'm going to look under meshes or objects, and we'll look to see if that's in there. And so there's this one, which is that insert. So I'm going to actually have to delete that also. And if I go to the meshes, there's the mesh. I'm going to delete that also. So I've got to delete all these things. Now I'm good. Now I can say file, save. Now we have this nice render Vitali. So if I go to file, new, okay, and I'm going to create thumbnails. I'll go to KitOps batch, my thumbnails, open render.blend. There's the original one, but now let's go and open the render vitali.blend, and you'll see that we have this, and you'll see that in this area over here, objects, we only have the objects that we have. So that's exactly what we want. So once that's done, now we load the insert. The insert's of course going to tell us where to save the thumbnails. So I'll go into load insert and my downloads, and I can just grab any one of these inserts I want and say align camera to insert, and that looks pretty good. Okay, once we have this done, now we're just ready to go ahead and do a test thumb render, and this is doing, that's a nice one. So I'm going to go ahead and render these. It's going to take a little longer because this time we're using cycles. So I will say batch render thumbs. Okay, so that was just a bit over 4 minutes for all of that. So that's 215 inserts we've just created with thumbs. Let's take a look at them. Let's create a new file, and I'm going to go under KitOps, and we'll go to Vitali Kit. And of course, it's going to take a little while for these things to load up. And instead of just pausing, I'm going to go ahead and show you how fast they do load up. So there we have all of our new thumbnails that are all created, and they're created with our new render scene background. So, and I can of course scroll through. This might be a good chance to talk about, you might want to create multiple KitOps K-packs when you do something like this. But anyway, I can take any one of these now and add an insert to the object, and you can see that turns out really quite nicely. So the next thing we want to talk about in KitOps batch is going to be the decal feature. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk a bit about the new decal feature of KitOps batch, and that's that last tab over here. And it's actually a really, really cool feature. Let me show you why. So here are a bunch of decals that I want to convert. Just for instance, you'll see that these are all around, these ones are 864 pixels and this one is 710. So they're not huge, but Batch will work with virtually any size decal. So let's open up one of these decals like this one here. And you'll see that the purple in this picture represents the transparent area. So this decal is just black and everything else is transparent. And when you're creating decals, that's important to keep in mind. If we look at this color decal, you'll see that it's solid on the inside, but the radius corners are also transparent. Let's go back to Blender. First thing we want to do is we want to actually choose the folder of decals we want to work with. So I'm going to come in here. These are all those decals. Let me go ahead and show you the thumbnails. You see that here's all the decals. You can see the transparency as we just explained a minute ago. And so I'll accept this folder. And then I'll choose a decal template file. Batch comes with 3 different decal templates, and in fact, if you know what you're doing, you can make your own. It's pretty easy. You just got to make sure you name the nodes correctly. Check the documentation for more about that. But there's a metallic one, there's a regular one, and an emissive one. Now, the interesting things about all 3 of these is that if you decide to create everything with the regular decal, you can easily turn it into a metallic or emissive in the material settings of that decal. So it's not required that you actually create a metallic one and a regular one and an emissive one. You can just use one and you'll be fine. So once I've done that, I'll go back into my window, I'll toggle the system console, I'll hit the batch convert, and this will go pretty fast. Okay, that was 22 seconds, so pretty good. Now if we go into the folder, you'll see that we have a new blend file for every single one of these decals. You'll also see that the decals are still here and they're still the same size as they were. So that means when we go to load them up, we're going to be loading up huge size decals, which is not something we really want to do. So when we actually replace these actual decals with thumbnails, they're going to be named the exact same thing. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here are the decals, and as you can see, they're transparent and they look correct. But they're the full-size decals. They're huge. The actual thumbnails are. I'm just talking about the thumbnails. They're very large. So we're still going to want to go ahead and go into KitOps batch, and we're going to create thumbnails. We'll open the render.blend file. Let's load an insert, and we'll get it from here. We'll just grab any one of these. Then we'll say align camera to insert, and let's go into our rendered view. In this particular case, we may want to move down just a little bit, take a look at it like this, and let's just add a little camera padding, and we can do a test thumb render, and that's what it looks like. And then once we're done, we'll just say batch render the thumbs. Okay, and we're done there. And so we'll go into a new file. By the way, you never want to save this. You don't want to save this render.blend file. In fact, it might be good to turn this file into a read-only file so you don't save it. If there's any problems that you're having inside of KitOps batch, it may be because you saved this, but we'll actually go into a new file. And now we're going to come in and we're going to look at this object. Now I'm going to actually edit this object real quick there. And I'm going to go into my KitOps and load my test ping folder. Here are my newly rendered decals. And I'll grab one. Let's grab this one like this. I'm going to add this insert to my object. I'm going to put it on this curve. I'm going to scale it just a little bit. One of the things that we've added here is the ability to actually map this to a curve, and it's very simple. We just go over to the modifiers for this object and make sure the subdivision is set. Let's go ahead and look at my wireframe, and we can see that the modifier for this is set to be a little bit larger than this curve. So I'm going to actually add a little more resolution to it. There we have it. And then the shrink wrap, what we just need to do here is choose the target. So we'll click here, click here. Let's turn off the wireframe, and we can see that that worked out pretty good. In fact, I might want to right click and say shade smooth on this, and it'll even look better. We can go in and look at the materials settings, and because it's a black and white decal, we turn the color on. So there's the white color, and I can choose this to be any color I want. That's how I'm going to get it to be a colored decal. Now if I want to make it a emission decal, I'll go over here and I'll plug this in, and I can jack up the strength, and now we have an emission decal. And if I want to make it a metallic decal, I just come over here and I move this into the metallic, and now I've got a nice metallic decal. I can change the color down to something like here. And while I'm in this jacking up metallic, I might want to take the roughness and bring it down. And now you can see how nicely that creates a metallic decal. So let's go ahead and let's show you how we do this with a color decal. So I'll take this color decal here and I'll add that insert here, maybe scale it up a little bit. And again, I'll go into the subdivision. I'm going to add one there, and I will look for the target and click here, and then right click and say shade smooth this. So now this is all smooth, and you can see it works great. So color on off is at 0 now. If I turn it on to 1, you'll see that that doesn't work. So I leave that at 0. If I want to add metallic to it, I just push metallic out to 1 and roughness down a little bit. And now you can see that's a metallic. And if I want to make it emissive, I just drag this little emission thing right up here and do this and jack that up. And now we have a very emissive decal. Even with one decal material, I can change it from emission to metallic to using the regular decal color to overriding the decal color, all in one model. So that should do it for this introduction to KitOps Batch. And I think this is a fairly full-featured tutorial on how to use it. Don't forget to check the online documentation as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you online.